Good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Jessica Blum here, joining you in the 1011 Alert Center to talk about the forecast. As we get closer to this weekend, still a small chance for rain. We're going to talk about who that chance for rain is a little bit better for going tomorrow into the early portions of the weekend. Still looking quite warm for early portions of next week. And of course, it's Thursday, so we did have our latest drought monitor released, and there were some changes in that. So those are kind of your bigger headlines that we are going to be discussing here this evening, just past 8 o'clock on February 12th, here Thursday this week, or Friday Eve, as I like to call it. Drought conditions did worsen across Nebraska, so we will talk more in detail about that. Again, go to Skycast and really time out that chance for rain and for who in southern Nebraska toward the weekend, as well as the warming trend that we're kind of in the middle of. That'll just be continuing really for the end of this week and into early next week, with temperatures warming at least a couple degrees each day toward Valentine's Day and President's Day early next week. So as for your latest drought monitor, this was released from this morning, and you can see this is actually last week's, This is last week's drought monitor, and then I'll show you what was released this morning. So you see that there's a large area of moderate drought for much of northeast, central, and western Nebraska. Severe drought for much of the Panhandle. The Panhandle is where it got worse this week. In fact, there are portions of Morrill and Box Butte counties out to the east of Scotts Bluff that you can see did turn to extreme drought, as well as the severe drought did expand for some in the Panhandle into northeastern portions of Colorado. Meanwhile, eastern Nebraska stayed much the same. But we have yet to see measurable precipitation here in Lincoln for quite some time, as has other parts of the state really holding out on anything meaningful this winter, whether that be rain, whether that be snow. In fact, the comparison over the last 60 days for each of these locations shows that some deep red colors, meaning well below average precipitation for much of southwest Nebraska. That translates with central Nebraska as well. Southeast Nebraska faring just a little bit better, but below normal as well. And really putting some numbers to this map as you look at, again, that was over the last couple months, the last 60 days. This is kind of adding up the precipitation, the total precipitation each month, and then comparing that to the monthly average. So this goes back a year to last March, and you can see through the end of spring into early summer, each of those months were running well below average. In Lincoln, until we got to July, then we were at about a half an inch above average, an inch and a half above average in August, faring pretty well into early September, before we had another dry stretch, October through December, each of those months below average. January ended up being above average this year because we had that one day that got us really our average precipitation in one go. But now, so far, February through yesterday, still running below average because we just haven't seen much moisture. In fact, in total, we've seen 1/100th of an inch. So that's why the drought will have to continue to watch. But for western Nebraska, it continues to get worse. I wanted to show you the snowfall comparison, too, because it was interesting. Our only precipitation for much of this year so far has come in the form of rain in January. But as for snow, we know we've been lacking in that department as well. These first numbers you're looking at for Lincoln, Omaha, and Norfolk are the average that we should see to this day. So as you can see, for the season, we've only had about 6, 7, 8 inches so far in each of these locations, which is actually ahead of schedule for Lincoln and Omaha compared to where we were at this time last season. Norfolk is still above the pace they set last season as well. So we're not to average snowfall, but we are seeing snowfall amounts that are higher than they were at this time through last season. But again, it's just been so long since we've seen snow. These numbers really came from early on in the season. And if you remember last season, we saw more of a snowfall kind of loaded onto the back end of the season. So We are still looking into snow chances. There are still advertisements in the weather models longer range toward the end of next week for more meaningful precipitation for more people in the state going toward next Friday, Saturday, maybe even into Sunday. So we're going to keep an eye on that. And whether that falls in the form of rain or maybe some accumulating snow, that still has yet to be determined, something we are going to continue to look at, because as you can imagine, as we get closer to that date, models continue to change where they place snow versus rain and everything like that. But keep an eye on the end of next week as we are. Wanted to include Grand Island, Hastings, and North Platte tonight too, because they are actually trending a little bit drier than at this time last year, especially for Hastings and Grand Island. Hastings and North Platte. At this time last season, they had 5.5, almost 7 inches. But this season, you've only got 5.2 inches for the season in Hastings, so that's below last season and well below the seasonal average through this date. And then North Platte's only seen less than 2 inches of total snowfall when their average is closer to 17.5. Grand Island's at 6.3 inches this season. That is running a bit ahead of schedule compared to last year when they had 5.2 inches through this point in the season. So I know the kids are missing out on some snow. Every time I go on a school visit, another day, another school visit, I ask them if they've been missing the snow, and a lot of them say yes. But they have been enjoying the nice weather lately too, and it makes for an easy time getting out to the weather shield and taking a picture like this together. So I ventured out to Prescott Elementary this afternoon to see a few kindergarten classes. I want to give a thanks to Mrs. Langmeyer, Miss Trusty, as well as Mrs. Frank and Mrs. Bowder for all the great kindergartners, the curious minds. They were very interested in hearing about damaging wind, my job, being curious about the weather overall, and hopefully inspired some to maybe want to keep looking at the weather and maybe do what we do as they grow up, hopefully, because there are not a lot of us that do this work, especially here in the state, and stick around for very long, because in this business, some people are cut out for it, some people are not, but the kindergartners it's one of my favorite things to see their eyes light up, to see what the weather can do in Nebraska, because their lives have just started, and they haven't seen a lot just yet, but they all had a really good time today, and then settling down for a picture was a different story, but they were a good time nonetheless. As for your Lincoln Weather Almanac for this Thursday, February 12th, we did drop down to 29 degrees this morning, so not nearly as cold as yesterday. In fact, the Lincoln Airport was around 14 degrees yesterday for a low, so we almost doubled that for a morning low today. And then afternoon highs did get into the lower 60s today, but there you see it, 1/100th of an inch for the month. No precipitation, of course, today. And we are below average for snowfall by about 10.5 inches. Your low temperatures across the state were in the 20s, if not the 30s. The one exception to that being Chadron, who fell down to 18 degrees this morning, but managed to get back right up there with everybody else in the upper 50s and lower 60s. So a similar day across the state. I think we'll kind of rinse and repeat this going into Friday. So if you like today, got more of that ordered for tomorrow. Light winds, really warm temperatures for this time of the year. I know as we turn to our Skyview cameras now across the state, it was really nice to see the sun lasting a little bit longer in the sky. Last hour, or toward the end of the 6 o'clock hour into the 7 o'clock hour, we had still some daylight to be seen on these Skyview cameras. But of course, as you join me at this point in the night, at this time of the year, it's looking rather dark and quiet. But I cannot wait to maybe have these live streams as we get later in the year, maybe feature a little bit more dusk and light in the sky to see, what's going on out there for some cloud cover, because there virtually isn't much here in eastern Nebraska. The airport then falling to 38 degrees at this point, but still comfortably in the lower 40s at the 1011 studio. and we've got very calm winds here in the capital city. Here at home, we've got temperatures mostly in the 40s. There's a spot on the south side of town still around 50 degrees, so not bad for an evening walk in February. In southeast Nebraska, temperatures are mostly still in the 40s. 47 in Nebraska City and Auburn, 41 in Omaha, 38 at the Lincoln Airport, but 36 down in Beatrice, 46 in Red Cloud. As you look across the state, some in the northern reaches have fallen into the 30s and the 20s. Wayne is down to 28 degrees, 33 in Tacoma, but still 47 in McCook and Imperial with a little more cloud cover out that way. But light winds, really calm winds for just about everyone in eastern Nebraska especially. But there you see it. Maybe a few clouds here and there in eastern Nebraska and central Nebraska. We do have some light showers moving off of the front range of the mountains, the Rocky Mountains that is, out in western and southwestern Nebraska. So some rain for areas like Harrisburg, Kimball. Those areas are along that stretch of I-80 that goes into Wyoming. These showers are rolling from Wyoming and Colorado into southwestern Nebraska, not expected to bring too much precipitation. But as I move satellite and radar over to southeast Nebraska, you can see how quiet it is for a lot of us here on a Thursday evening. As we go forward in time, you can see a lot of those light showers will kind of fade away with time. By the time a lot of us are waking up tomorrow morning and getting ready for the day, mostly sunny to partly cloudy for eastern and central Nebraska. And then I think we'll see largely some high-level clouds for much of the afternoon time frame on Friday. But clouds will be building in by Friday night ahead of the next system that is coming together to our south. I've been talking about this for a while now. We were keeping an eye on this system and how far it may hedge to the north to give some in Nebraska a rain chance. It's not going to be everyone, and it's actually not going to be a lot of us. It's going to be best for those closer to the Kansas border. Not a lot of that showing up at this point, late Friday night and into early Saturday, but then it starts to come a little bit better together for a little more steady light rain showers, I think, from McCook over toward Fall City by the mid-morning hours. Not expected to add up to all that much. And then the rain will start to clear out for everyone as we go into the late afternoon and early evening hours of your Saturday. On February 14th on Valentine's Day. So not expecting a whole lot to add up to anything here in Lincoln. I'd be surprised if the airport reports anything more than a trace or 1/100 of an inch. In fact, this model does the best job of showing that maybe we see 1/100 of an inch in Lincoln, but the better chance at some measurable rain adding up to a few hundredths to 1/10 of an inch to maybe 2/10 of an inch as you look toward Fall City, areas very far south in the state. A little bit better chance at some moisture adding up to, 1/10 or two. That being said, this isn't rain, so we'll take the moisture, but you can see a lot of northern areas that are not seeing any type of moisture out of this system, especially those north of I-80. You are not expected to see really anything at all through the early portions of this weekend, and that includes even Lexington, our town Lexington. We continue to feature them this week, with temperatures starting out in the middle and upper 20s tomorrow morning. Should be closer to freezing by 8 a.m. with a northerly wind around 10 to 20 miles per hour. Still a lot of sunshine, I think, by the afternoon and warming to the lower 60s. We'll call it mostly sunny to partly cloudy for you into your weekend and Valentine's Day weekend at that. Should see a nice jump closer to 70 degrees by Sunday and early next week. And that'll last through, I think, the middle portions of the week before temperatures will slide back a little bit, I think, going into the following weekend. Your Schaefer's Lincoln forecast has us at 30 degrees closer to midnight. Mainly clear skies. We'll be cooling down into the 20s, but still above average. And this is pretty comparable to what we saw this morning. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind, however you prepared for this morning, whether that was a coat or not. I would probably keep a coat around for the early portions of the day, but you won't really need it by the afternoon as we're warming to about 60 degrees again with very, very light winds. Under about 10 miles per hour, I think, for much of the day. But hour by hour, your Lincoln planner has us at 60 degrees by around 3 o'clock. Sunset is getting closer to 6 p.m. You'll notice that for February 13th. And our average high is at 40 degrees. So we'll be about 20 degrees above that here at home for the end of the work week. Really just about everyone drops into the 20s overnight tonight, with high temperatures tomorrow well into the lower 60s for just about everyone. So if you didn't get to 60 degrees today, you'll likely get closer to it tomorrow, if not into the middle 60s. Albion's at 65 degrees, North Platte, Ogallala, Imperial in the same boat, 66 degrees for McCook for a forecasted high. And then the start of your weekend still looks rather warm. I mean, we're only talking about a degree or two different, if that, for a lot of locations for Valentine's Day. I know the weekend will feature pretty calm winds as well. Sunday, I think we'll just have a little bit more of a breeze on Monday for President's Day, and then turning to be a little more breezy by Tuesday and Wednesday, with wind gusts maybe in the ballpark of 20 to 30 miles per hour, especially in Lincoln. The end of your weekend has a lot of us getting closer to 70 degrees, if not hitting that 70-degree mark in McCook and Imperial. No shocker there, but we got a forecasted high of 65 in Lincoln on Sunday. And then we've got to talk about Monday and Tuesday, because we will be nearing record territory for each of those days. We've got a forecast high at 66 on Monday, closer to 70 degrees on Tuesday, and that's within a few degrees of record high temperatures for each of those days from back in 2017. 2017 had some warmer weather at this time of the year when we saw temperatures get into the lower 70s. So as we get closer to early next week, if we think any of those temperatures are getting a little warmer, we would get a little closer to those records. I know Tuesday we've kind of kept at 69 degrees because there may be a little more cloud cover that day. That may be spoiling the 70s for us. And again, nowhere near the 76 degrees we had on Monday. But your Monday forecast across the state has temperatures still close to 70 degrees, especially in southwestern Nebraska, as well as Tuesday. Again, this unseasonably warm air mass, I think, is really going to last for a lot of us through the early, if not middle portions of next week, before those temperatures will slide back into the 50s and 40s looking at next weekend. And that will come with a chance for rain, maybe even some snow for some, something we are going to continue to look into as we get closer. But of course, models still have a lot of wobble in where some accumulating snow will set up for the end of next week, as well as some rain. But you can certainly see the temperatures do take a hit when we're talking about 60s and almost 70s to the 40s and even the 30s, talking about that February 21st, 22nd time frame. This weekend will fare a lot better, I think, than next weekend when we're talking about precipitation chances and cooler weather and probably some more cloud cover. So kind of soak in the happiness we can get from sun at this time of the year and warm weather before it will kind of feel a little bit more like winter and late winter at that going into the end of next week, because that, you can see, does correspond with some better precipitation chances, peaking at around 30 to 40%, especially in Omaha and Norfolk, and I think northern areas of the state. Falls City is at a 70% chance of rain tomorrow. Again, those areas closer to the Kansas border will likely see a little rain throughout early portions of Saturday before wrapping up by the afternoon, and then very, very small chances at any moisture between Saturday and then the end of next week for everyone in the state. Your 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook does have portions of northern Nebraska favoring at least a little chance at above average precipitation from the 20th through the 26th, and still fairly warm weather compared to average, again, which is getting into the 40s at this point. So I think we'll take that, but that boils down to this 7-day forecast for your Valentine's Day weekend through early next week and President's Day. And we do have mild and breezy conditions labeled on Tuesday because, again, those wind gusts, I think, Tuesday and even maybe into Wednesday will be around 25, maybe 30 miles per hour. We do have a small chance of rain in Lincoln on Saturday, but, again, it will not be much if it adds up to anything at all. So do not bank on that, but with a little more cloud cover on that day, I think that'll keep us from getting quite to 60 degrees for Valentine's Day, but then in the middle 60s and a wonderful end to the weekend. Early next week looks fantastic as well. Again, getting closer to 70 degrees on Tuesday. in the ballpark of some records on Monday and Tuesday before those temperatures will kind of slide back going into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of next week. So just wanted to give you a little look into, of course, our brain. This is always a chance for you to kind of pick our brains in the Severe Weather Center as we work on the forecast, and I get to spend a little longer time with you than we can in a newscast in some 3, 4, or 5 minutes. So hopefully that give you a better picture of what you can expect for kind of this holiday weekend and the middle of the month of February. It seems like the time is starting to pick up a little bit more. You know, January always feels so long, but I think February has kind of gone by pretty quickly so far, and we know as we get toward later spring and summer, time just kind of flies because it gets rather busy, but even this time of the year can be busy for some. But now I'm just rambling on. I appreciate everyone joining me here this evening. Again, Brad will have you covered for the latest forecast tonight at 10. Bill, if not Brandon, will have you covered for a 10:30 stream on our streaming platforms and our Roku channel, as well as on our website under the live stream tab. If you want to tune into that, we'll continue to work our way through this forecast and keep a look at things for the end of next week as we get closer. So keep that in mind. We'll enjoy the warm weather while we have it.
1011 News is everywhere. Download our